Hello and welcome to Transmission. Tonight I am joined by Danni. So, Danni, you've come all the way from Shepparton today to be here.
Yeah.
So, sort of, what's I suppose, what's brought you down today?
I got told about this through a friend, and I decided to come and check it out.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So, can you tell me a bit about yourself? So, living in Shepparton.
Okay, well, I'm 20. I live in Shepparton. It's a country town, like little country town. Yeah.
Yeah? Cool. And so, what sort of stuff do you like to do for fun?
Just hair, makeup. I like gardening sometimes. Having fun with friends, yeah.
So, hair and makeup, so do you sort of do that just for fun, or are you sort of working in that area?
Well, I used to be a hairdresser, but just lost interest and stuff. But, I like the hair and beauty field. It's pretty good.
What do you like in particular about it?
Just, new styles, new trends, new makeup. New everything,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so do you sort of, like, even though you sort of left that for work, do you still sort of do in terms of, like, friends' hairs and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah.
And, what do you like about doing that in terms of friends? And...
Oh, well, because they're my friends, so I don't really want them walking around looking terrible. I want them looking nice.
Yep.
So
it reflects you nicely.
Yeah. Because I've done the work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. And what sort of other stuff do you get up to in sort of Shepparton?
Oh, well, there's not much to do, actually. There's a lake, or trees, or bush, or cows, sheep.
Yep.
Very country.
Yep.
Yeah, probably just hang out with friends. Yeah.
Do you is there sort of some good stuff going on there? Do you enjoy it, or?
Well, I enjoy it because like my family and friends are in Shepparton, but anything other than that, it's not really.
Yeah. And sort of if you had some really, I suppose in terms of, have you always sort of lived in that area?
Yeah, Shepparton. Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess sort of part of your sort of journey sort of to get to this point, have you had some positive experiences, any negative experiences?
With getting where?
So in terms of your sort of gender expression or anything like that?
I've had some random people just walk up to me or like walk past me and just compliment me like, oh, you're nice, you're pretty, or something like that. Yeah.
And I suppose in terms of with your family and your friends, do they sort of know a bit about you in terms of how you're identifying?
Yeah.
And that, and how have things been going?
Well, my friends, when I came out, I lost some. But, you find out who your true friends are. So, but family-wise, Dad didn't like it, but, get over it. Mum, she took it quite well. She's like, oh, you're still my daughter. You're still my, do you know what I mean? So it's pretty, it's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, so you've sort of been interested, you had some interest in sort of hair, makeup and all those sorts of things. Do you have sort of what's, your plans for the future, I suppose?
Definitely leave Shepparton. Either own my own business or be an independent. woman.
So own your own business. That's, so what
Yeah.
sort of...
Well, I'm still thinking of what field, but I know that I want to own a business.
So any sort of plans, I suppose, in the near future of any sort of shifts or...
I'll probably leave Shepparton after I turn 21 in August.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
the 3rd. Yeah.
And any big sort of celebrations?
I'll probably just go out and probably have a few beverages with the friends and stuff. Yeah.
And I suppose, like, sort of backtracking a little bit, in terms of with your friends and things like that, do you find that there's much of sort of a queer community?
In Shepparton?
Yeah.
Well, there's not much really of us trans girls in Shep. It's very sort of like it's hidden away, or it's like I don't really know how to explain it, but it's sort of hidden away, and people in Shep, I feel that some of them are too shy and stuff, so they just
Sort of keep to themselves?
Yeah. So, yeah.
So do you have sort of many friends that are sort of in the trans community?
Well, I have one trans friend in Shep. Yeah.
Yeah. And so is there sort of that sort of supportive, do you sort of have a support, the sort of supports, I suppose?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, like we talk about, what we talk about and stuff.
Yeah. So can you give me...
trans issues and
Yeah.
so on and so forth.
So you've got someone, I suppose, that you can...
That we talk to. So it's
Yeah.
just like someone to talk to and stuff. Yeah.
Cool. And have you found sort of that's been helpful, or...
Well, yeah, like it has been helpful, just talking to someone about, yourself or your sexuality, and, it'll actually make you feel better, like, made me feel better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So any sort of plans in terms of... you said that you like perhaps wanting to move or something like that.
Yeah.
Is there any plans on where you would move?
Probably in the city, because I'm just over country just not.
Yeah.
Flies and just cows and animals, no.
Country's alright. Like, I was a country boy, and
Yeah.
it's not all bad. I
Yeah.
suppose cows are important for coffee and things like that.
Yeah,
You need the
yeah,
milk,
yeah,
so
true.
it kind
Yeah.
of works.
Yeah.
So look, I suppose a big thank you to come down and have a bit of a chat to us about
Thank
a little
you
bit
for
about...
having me here.
Yeah, it's been really nice. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
So a big thank you to Danni. You've been watching Transmission.
Hi, you're watching Transmission. Trans people do love to talk. Have a listen to what they have to say.
If you had a magic wand, what would you change to make the world better for trans people?
Magic wand, and it'd take a really big one, but it'd be eliminate transphobia. I think that's the biggest thing holding most transgender people back from going out into society and trying to just be themselves like I'm doing myself. So to be able to eliminate transphobia, I think would benefit absolutely everybody.
I guess in the time that I've been working in the trans community, we've tried to move away from tolerance to acceptance, and acceptance is still, I think, a begrudging term. So what I would love with a magic wand is to have gender diversity embraced and celebrated by the community.
I would make everybody's language a bit better. I would get people to ask other people what pronouns they presume, before presuming on other people what pronouns they would like, and just to be more respectful of other people and what they need.
I would like for there to be more education about the transgender lifestyle and the issues we face. In particular, a lot of myths and misconceptions that have been perpetuated by Hollywood and television and other forms of media. There's been a lot of mistruths put out there over the years, and people just kind of take them as fact. So I would love for there to be more education from an earlier age about, just being transgender.
I think full access to medical services that on the public health system, so people don't have to pay out of their own pocket, because it's extremely expensive. And I think it's already hard enough to try and get assets like a house or something in this day and age, but to have to pay up to 20 grand or more on surgeries and medical expenses it just puts people in a much more disadvantaged state. So I'd do that.
That just femininity was more valued in society, and that I mean, obviously this is from my male to female perspective, but I just think it's, especially in Australian society, femininity is undervalued, and it shouldn't be seen as a weak or a sort of a false way to be. Yeah.
Oh, I'll go with instinct. I'm going to say the health professional situation. The shortage of health professionals of all sorts, doctors, listening types, chiropractors, whatever, just that we could go into a health professional and get the service we need in that circumstance without having to do a trans 101, without being pathologised. And if it was a trans specialist thing, that there would be more surgeons and endos and that sort of thing. I think that's becoming really, really critical.
Wow, a magic wand. First I'd pose with it because amazing, a magic wand. What would I do? Wow. I would make the gatekeeper system non-existent, and I'd cover surgeries and hormones and have it all free by Medicare.
Less questions about what your genitals look like.
If you had a magic wand, what would you change to make the world better for trans people?
I thought you were going to ask something else for a minute there. What a magic wand, what would I change on me? No. It's so tempting just to say remove gender on toilets. That's probably not a feasible thing, but magic wand. I kind of don't mind the struggle, even though I've said I'm happy to be through a lot of it. It is our journey, it is who we are. I appreciate the other side of the story, and I find it a bit hard sometimes when trans people say, oh, I got misgendered or this sort of thing, because if I'm perfectly honest, when I see someone, I want to know what gender they are in my head. And I don't know why, but it just helps me sort out the world. So I don't know that there's an awful lot. Maybe just a bit more understanding and tolerance.
Obviously, the easy thing, make everybody able to change, if it's specifically change, everybody able to change any aspect of your physical appearance at will. My favorite sci-fi series books. One of the things, anybody can mentally initiate any sort of, sex change, body change. Like, if you want to be some big, hulking, beefy guy, then yes, you can start secreting hormones for that like crazy. If you want to change yourself into a petite female, yes, you can do that. Take a few months, but, easy.
I'd love for there to be no stigma attached to being trans. So, no one ever felt ashamed to try different clothing out or live as different genders. And also, I'd love for gender swapping to be so much more accessible and easier to do. Rather than really expensive and hard and really hard to access. So, no stigma. I'd love trans in general to be celebrated almost, and a really bright, visible part of our community that is seen as bringing joy, which it should be, which it is, but mostly by mainstream community.
I would probably try and take the stress out of their heads.
If I had a magic wand, it's hard because on one hand I'd like to say magic wand, all procedures, hormone replacement therapy, and therapy full stop is free, but maybe I'd make that and probably get rid of all of the unaccepting people or people who are unwilling to learn about it, because sometimes I feel like people are significantly more part of the problem than just your bodies, and I don't know.
I would like to see gender be less relevant to how people interact. So people are just completely free to be whoever they are, and there's just no social expectation of one thing or the other.
I think it would be people taking the time to become educated about trans issues. So because a lot of the offence people cause, I guess, to myself personally, is just naivety. So asking stupid questions, like when I've just met them, like, oh, do you have a dick? Or, like that sort of stuff. So, yeah.
Hey, that was cool. We'll see you after the break.
Welcome back to Transmission on Bent TV. I'm Sammy Cameron, and today we're talking about sex and sexual health. Now that I have your attention, joining me today are Andrew, Mish and Nate. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
So let's just start by saying that cisgendered people are those that aren't trans. We might use that word every so often. So how is sex different for trans people from cisgendered people?
I don't think it is all that incredibly different. Like, there's issues to think about in terms of different bodies, different experiences, but I think, the same guidelines of consent and talking things through apply the same.
I think it's different between, I suppose it's similar, that sort of negotiation and all that sort of stuff, which would happen sort of with anybody, but it's, I think there's a bit, it is slightly different in terms of if you're out and about and you're hooking up randomly and those sorts of things. There's a lot more sort of discussion that you might not necessarily have with someone who you've met for 10 minutes otherwise. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's the point of disclosure, perhaps at some particular point in time during the pre-mating proceedings that you need to give some thought about. Do cis people run away when they find out that someone's trans?
There have been incidences. I think every trans person would have one or two stories to relate where they were getting on well with someone and then couldn't take the next step because those person just left. That certainly does happen.
And how much difficulty does this fear of rejection due to your trans status add to the situation of seeking out sex and relationships?
I think it can be quite debilitating for some people, and it's quite terrifying to have to out yourself to a complete stranger. But personally, I don't find it particularly hard. Yeah.
I mean, I think it can be, and I think it comes down to sort of how you're feeling. So if it's a night that you're feeling good and, you're looking fabulous, you're dancing, all those sort of things, then if you're a bit more confident and you talk to someone and you tell them, and if they was to say, no, look, not my thing, then that's fine. But if you're maybe feeling a little bit down on yourself, then it's going to impact you a bit more, like anything, I suppose.
It's probably the day to skip it anyway, Nate.
Well, I pick you up, like, really.
Oh,
This isn't a dating thing, okay? So is communication the key? And you highlighted communication can actually be difficult sometimes.
Yeah.
That fear of having to out yourself to somebody.
I think lots of people find communication in sex, anyone really can find it quite difficult because we live in a society where, sex isn't something we talk about as openly or freely as maybe we should. And I think, talking in really obvious ways and really, I suppose, being indiscreet about sex is something that's frowned upon. Yeah.
Perhaps we need to be a bit more explicit when we're close to somebody. How do you feel about potential partners that are specifically very interested in trans people? Do you feel fetishized and perhaps not being seen as a real human being?
I suppose it's that line, like, in terms of, like, is it a fetish or is it just someone into that? So, like, you know, you could say that I'm into, you know, guys that look like this, or I'm into women that look like this. I'm into trans people. Like, I kind of, like, there's, like, a taste, like an interest and all that sort of stuff, and then there's something that's more than that?
So,
I don't know.
to what extent it's an obsession is a grey sort of graph somewhere along the line.
There is a legitimate sexual attraction to trans people, and I think it's time that the world realise that. And that from both the male and female side. There are people genuinely sexually attracted to trans people. And I don't think that's a bad thing.
What about physical safety risks related to sex for trans people? I guess that could manifest itself in a number of different ways, I suppose.
Yeah, I was actually reading a really good article this morning about that. How about at that point of disclosure, if someone hasn't read you as trans before that can be a real serious place for violence to occur, particularly for trans women disclosing to heterosexual men, because then they can perceive that that's their heterosexuality under threat.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen terrible examples of that over the years.
I think with that, it's in terms of being safety, is that there's risk of safety when you're going to start having sex with anybody, regardless of your trans status. And something that I think is important is to make sure that you're aware of that. So if you are sort of going to disclose, do it in somewhere that's like a public place or something like that. That's you know, and limiting the risk that you are putting yourself in is always important.
What about for a trans sex worker? Is that safety risk any different?
I think trans sex workers work in a range of different settings and places, and so it's really hard to generalise about trans sex work as an overall term. But, you know, the issues of disclosure might not actually be as relevant for trans sex workers that are working, you know, in a trans parlour or advertise as trans, but there are also trans people who work stealth. And so, you know, it really depends how the particular worker's working.
So are trans people more likely to have sex with other trans people? Or is it just a matter of patiently looking till you find the right open-minded person or people? Is that awkward for you guys to answer?
Personally, that's very true for me, that, you know, I do hook up with a lot of other trans people, and I find that that's really good for sex because there is that kind of, you know, shared understanding about disclosure in different bodies. But, you know, you can't generalise that to all trans people, and, you know, I've had some shitty sex situations with trans people. But, you know, that's definitely a result of the communities I move in. Yeah.
And what about sexual health issues? Are they any different for trans people than cisgendered people?
I'd say that back to the previous question, that yes, you can get yourself as a trans person into situations in sex that you didn't intend to be in when you first started the sexual encounter. And I suppose that's true of everyone. But I do feel that trans people are somewhat less inclined to be intimate as often as they would like, possibly, and desperate to keep that situation going when it is happening, so can say yes to doing things they never intended to do. And then you've got the added thing of, do they then feel comfortable going to their doctor or their health professional to have a check? And there's been a lot of situations where we know that trans people just do not source the health care that they should be getting, especially for sexual health. But really, really pleased to say we were at the World AIDS Conference last week, and that the guys from Pronto came up and asked for community consultation on how to improve their quick screening for HIV, for instance. And that, of course, Swanson Street are good too on that regarding dealing with trans people.
So sexually transmitted infections are something that we really should just be as aware of, if not more so, I suppose, for trans people. So I guess the point is that sexual health, you should really consult a doctor on a regular basis to make sure that things are okay. So I'd like to thank Andrew, Mish and Nate for joining us today. I'm Sammy Cameron on Transmission for Bent TV. I look forward to seeing you next time.